Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland. Dear friends, I welcome this opportunity to speak at the London School of Economics, one of the most reputable British universities. I know that young people from many countries, including Russia, study here, and this fact alone creates a very good atmosphere and promotes a broad and open-minded view, encourages to be socially active, if I may say so. The modern Russia is a country which transforms using its own experience, using the experience of other countries, and it strives to be a land of new opportunities that is open to partnerships and trade and investments, that is open to civil society contacts and projects in all areas of public life. The main task of our foreign policy is to contribute to comprehensive modernization of the country and transition of our economy to an innovative high-tech development pattern. To achieve this goal, we have mobilized our own political will and resources, but we are ready to close interaction with our partners. We understand quite well that they do care what kind of Russia they are dealing with. There are all necessary conditions to make the modernization of Russia an all-European project, as was the case during the reforms of Peter the Great. This project could become a major input in the efforts to overcome the consequences of the global crisis, and this is the essence of our partnership for modernization with the European Union and its key members, as well as other partners in Europe, Asia, and America. I believe today the development issues have become a priority for all the states in the West and in the East, in the North and in the South. As in the previous 3 centuries, I think, Russia is prepared to assume its share of responsibility for the global state of affairs. We have no great power ambitions, nor do we suffer from the inferiority complex. We are committed to finding solutions to existing problems based on the rule of international law, balance of interests, and common sense. To this end, we actively participate in various collective mechanisms for managing international relations at the global and regional levels. This includes, of course, the United Nations, but also G8, G20, Commonwealth of Independent States, and various integration groupings on the post-Soviet space, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and others. This network diplomacy reflects the emergence of a new polycentric world order which would be more equitable, more democratic, and more sustainable. Teamwork philosophy underlies the entire Russia's diplomacy. Having long abandoned ideologically charged policy, we opted for a pragmatic and multi-vector approach to the promotion of our national interests. In a rapidly changing world, one can efficiently deal with global threats and challenges only through the broadest international cooperation. The scale of these challenges suggests that we pursue a positive and synergetic agenda and abandon suspicion and prejudices which undermine mutual trust and make it difficult to cooperate. Last year, the leaders of the countries in the Euro-Atlantic region succeeded in significantly improving the climate in the area. Relations in the field of security are changing, displaying the spirit of cooperation rather than confrontation. Areas of common interest are getting wider, and there is a chance to start genuine movement towards our common goal of ensuring stability and prosperity in the entire Europe, where there would be no dividing lines and where all countries would feel safe and secure, irrespective of whether they are members of military alliances or not. The outcome of the last year's NATO-Russia Council Summit in Lisbon, of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe Summit in Astana, as well as the New START Treaty concluded by Russia and the United States, have sent encouraging signals and reaffirmed that there is an increased understanding of the need to work together, pursuing a more constructive Euro-Atlantic policies and shaping today's partnership based on mutual trust and commitment to the principle of the indivisibility of security. What matters now is to translate this positive trend into specific actions, make the indivisibility of security legally binding. That's the essence of President Medvedev's proposal to negotiate a treaty on Euro-Atlantic security. We must not miss this chance, as we regrettably did more than once over the last couple of decades. Much will depend on how things will go with the European missile defense. We call for carrying out this project on the basis of equality and synergy of both NATO and Russian capabilities. This will test sincerity of all our joint declarations about willingness to cooperate and respect each other's security concerns. We have already acknowledged that we pose no threat to each other, but a new level of confidence can be achieved only through practical collective work to reach common objectives. For the first time in many years, the new window of opportunity seems to make it possible to overcome finally the legacy of the Cold War and start shaping a truly united Europe. We are prepared for this serious work. Both Russia and the United Kingdom can and should contribute to its success. We are also ready to develop further relations between our two countries. We see no reasons why those relations cannot be closer, more confidential, and strategically stable. Neither the Iron Curtain nor the Berlin Wall divides us any longer. All in all, we have much more in common between us than it might seem. Maybe here lies the reason why, despite all the differences between our countries on various issues, we stood together in the face of common challenges, sometimes of existential scale. This was the case in the years of 1812 through 1815, during the First and Second World Wars. You know how much those wars cost Russia. As for the Cold War, I would consider it as a time and space warp in European and world politics. From the historical perspective, it's only today that Europe and the whole world are emerging from the epoch launched by the First World War. This truly European catastrophe, the root causes of which are yet to be fully realized. All sacrificial predetermination of the tragic fate of Europe, shared also by Russia, was expressed with an impressive artistic force by D.H. Lawrence in his story England, My England. Its secular but essentially deeply Christian approach seems to be much needed in today's Europe. It is in our hands to ensure that all victims of the European history of the 20th century become redemptory. Today, when the world is witnessing the passing of the last imperial temptations, Russia and Britain are all the more doomed to be together in the face of common threats. I would like to mention just one of them, international terrorism. The tragedy in Domodedovo airport last January 24th took lives of citizens of six countries, including one from Britain. Unfortunately, our cooperation in counter-terrorism has not been developed lately, and not through the fault of Russia. At the same time, political dialogue between Moscow and London is gaining momentum. Top-level contacts have set the right tone for the multifaceted British-Russian intercourse. They will be maintained this year. We are looking forward to Prime Minister David Cameron's visit. It is quite realistic to expand our interaction on the world stage. Today, together with Secretary Haig, we have seen once again that our country's vision of such important issues as Afghanistan, Middle East settlement, non-proliferation, countering piracy, and confidence building in Europe are close. We also agreed to continue our coordination in the Security Council and other United Nations bodies. Our economic cooperation has good prospects. Great Britain is unfailingly among Russia's 5 major investment partners. The recent agreement among the oil giants Rosneft and BP, which in fact amounts to a strategic alliance, opens unique opportunities for strengthening partnership in various areas, including scientific and technological cooperation and creating innovation industrial capacity. Together with our British partners, we have identified 6 areas of diversifying our business relations. They are financial services, high-tech, energy and energy efficiency, support for small and medium-scale enterprises, cooperation in the continued use of the Olympic infrastructure, and improvement of the business climate. Undoubtedly, facilitating mutual travel by our citizens is a key prerequisite for success. We took note of the Prime Minister Cameron's declaration in favor of introducing a visa-free regime for the trips of Russian citizens into European member states of the Schengen zone. We hope that the same approach will also be applied in our bilateral relations, since UK is not part of the Schengen space. The lack of a full-fledged bilateral agreement in this sphere is hampering contacts in humanitarian and cultural fields, as well as among representatives of civil society. So I think that's what I wanted to say for starters. I would like to point out that in conclusion that today we have a real possibility to open a new page in the history of our relations, and I believe there is a common understanding that stronger and future-oriented bilateral ties have no reasonable alternative. Thank you very much.
Can I have the first question? This gentleman on the left.
Minister Lavrov, Mark Sloboda, International Relations Department, LSE. Modernization is the current buzzword in Russian politics. It seems to be the president's favorite word. But by any accounts, Russia entered modernity decades ago under the Soviet Union. Critics have said that modernization is just code for economic liberalization and the privatizations and weak foreign policy of the 1990s. What does modernization mean to you, and how will it influence foreign policy?
Well, the Modernization Agenda embraces all avenues of the life of the country, including the foreign policy. The foreign policy must create the best external conditions to implement the program of modernization which has been put forward by the President, and which concentrates on promoting key sectors of innovative economy with emphasis during the first phase on such things as nuclear energy, general energy and its efficiency, outer space, medicines, pharmaceuticals, this type of things where we do have some competitive edge and where we can use technologies from our external partners to put those ideas which we have into products. Making external conditions favorable for implementing our modernization plans means several things. It means that we need safe and secure surroundings, and that's where our initiatives on promoting Euro-Atlantic security come from. It also means that we want our business to be represented in the world markets on a non-discriminatory basis, so that we can promote partnerships between Russian companies and foreign companies in implementing the projects outside Russia, but also inside Russia. And I am glad that apart from Rosneft's BP strategic alliance, there are already good examples at the level of Russian and British companies. Gazprom Shell has a strategic partnership arrangement. Shell is also talking to Rosneft on energy efficiency package, which looks very promising. Thomas Cook concluded a joint venture arrangement with Russian Intourist company. So there are examples where we introduce new approaches which are based on pragmatism and the desire to exert advantages which would be mutually beneficial. And of course, the modernization in the foreign relations also means that we want to make the travel for our citizens as free as possible, and also to make the travel of foreigners into Russia comfortable and also free on a mutually acceptable basis. Those are just a few elements, few examples how the modernization reflects upon the Russian diplomatic activities. And I do believe that it is not a slogan to hide plans for another privatization, frankly. We understand the urgency of modernizing our economy. Yes, we have good ideas. No, we cannot, we don't know how to put them into products which would bring profits. And that's where alliances are really important. And we also understand that we cannot rely forever on hydrocarbons and on raw materials. We want to diversify our economy, and that's why ideas like Skolkovo Innovation Center, which by the way is being implemented with the participation of British companies, and we would like this participation to expand. That's where specific projects are being developed between Russian and British companies in pharmaceutical area. Diversification is the key to our success as a state in the new, very competitive world. So I can assure you that this is for serious intentions, not just a cover-up for something else.
Fourth row.
Thank you very much, Minister Lavrov. Teddy Nicholson, also International Relations Department. I was wondering if you would be able to comment on the events we've all been so excitedly watching in the Middle East, particularly the revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, and how Russia has engaged and whether Russia will engage in the future, in the near future, with the new regimes as they form in these two countries.
Well, certainly we're concerned with the events taking place in the Middle East. You mentioned Tunis and Egypt, but there are also other countries already where there are popular movements for change. Algeria, Jordan, Yemen, Iraq. I think that the countries in the Persian Gulf are also very closely watching what takes place in the neighboring states. Well, we don't want a Middle East which is destabilized. We don't want a Middle East which is a problem for the entire world. It's a key region of the world. Its history knew so many dramatic developments that I would hope that by now everyone would realize that it is in no one's interest to ignite any tension in the region. Several factors, I believe, played into the creation of conditions for what we are seeing now. Social and economic problems, of course, is one of them. Unresolved nature for many, many decades of the Arab-Israeli conflict is another, in my very firm conviction. And the main thing now is to avoid simplistic solutions. I don't believe that we will help a lot to stabilize the place and to promote popular rule, democratic rule, if we would be encouraging one side or another, either to tighten the grip on the situation or to accept immediately democratic values of the West. I don't believe either of these extremes is going to work. What is necessary is to encourage the parties themselves in each country to talk. And this is happening, this happened in Tunis, this is happening in Egypt, and I hope that others who have not yet seen such dramatic events would draw conclusions from this situation and would take some preemptive measures. The last thing I want to say on this one, I already mentioned unresolved nature of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Some people say, well, now that there are disturbances in the region, we shall freeze the efforts to agree between Palestinians and Israelis, between all Arabs and Israelis. I think it would be a huge mistake. I think it's the other way around. Progress on Palestinian-Israeli track could be not the only factor, but certainly a very important factor in promoting peace in the region, in promoting social stability. Many revolutionaries whom you watch every day, among other things, invoke the unfulfilled promises of a Palestinian state. And extremists and radicalists certainly speculate on this and try to ignite more and more tension. So I think the sooner we achieve some positive changes in the peace process, the better for the region. And I'm glad that about 10 days ago, meeting in Munich, the quartet, the Middle East quartet, Russia, US, EU, and the United Nations, agreed to intensify the efforts of the four players, with the parties, but also with the Arab League, to see what we can do urgently to overcome this impasse. And we're meeting exactly in 1 month in Paris to take stock of this situation.
This gentleman here.
Alexander Sidukov, Department of Economics, LSE. Sergey Viktorovich, what in your opinion should be done to resolve the conflict between Russia and Japan?
I wouldn't call it a conflict. I mean, we have been cooperating in so many fields, economy, culture, humanitarian areas. I just received the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan last Friday in Moscow. And yes, he confirmed his position on the peace treaty territorial issue. I confirmed our position. And this was not a game stopper, if you wish, in the negotiations. Having reaffirmed our positions, we sit down and started discussing practical things. Practical things being, economic cooperation to develop the Russian Far East and Eastern Siberia, including, by the way, the Kuril Islands, any of them. President Medvedev, some time ago, when he met Prime Minister Naoto Kan, invited the Japanese business to invest in joint ventures with Russia on the Kuril Islands. And Minister Maehara told me in Moscow that they are ready to consider this invitation, which is a welcome change. Before, the Japanese friends refused to discuss this. Of course, he said he doesn't want, potential cooperation on those islands to be used to compromise the official legal position, and no one is going to compromise the Japanese position, just like no one is going to compromise our position. Japanese companies are investing in Russia. I think all major automobile producers have opened up their plants in the Russian Federation. There are other industries which are represented, machine building for agriculture, for example, for construction industry, many other things. And the annual festivals of Russian culture in Japan are a hit, just like the Japanese performance visit Russia every year, several times every year. And there is no inhibition to promote this cooperation and to enrich our bilateral ties. Some time ago, one of the previous Japanese governments said, well, you're missing a chance because if you resolve the territorial issue, the Japanese investments would flow into Russia in a big way. They are flowing in a big way. And I believe the business is making its own conclusions, is taking its own decisions, and the governments of the two countries must hear what the business wants and must create comfortable conditions for mutually advantageous projects. As for the peace treaty issue itself, there is no way to start discussing anything until and unless our Japanese neighbors do what every other country did already, namely recognize the outcome and the results of World War II. When they say that they do not agree with these results, and they say this from time to time, we don't understand their position at all. After all, they signed and ratified the United Nations Charter, which in one of its articles clearly says that the results of the World War II are not negotiable. So the choice is theirs. They say that this is not acceptable. We say that our sovereignty is not for discussion. But we are ready to talk. And if we can talk on the peace treaty issue without trying to exert some one-sided historical advantages, if we talk honestly, I believe this is the way to proceed. I propose to Prime Minister Maehara that we create some sort of a group of scholars, like we have with, for example, Poland, Germany, Lithuania, some other countries, to discuss common history. He said that this would not be in the interest of Japan, that they don't see any advantage in creating such a format. Well, we cannot really impose upon them any of the ideas, but I think it would be useful for the public opinion in the two countries. In any case, this would be much more productive than becoming hysterical every time a Russian president or a Russian minister or deputy prime minister visits the Kuril Islands, which are the Russian territory.
Madam, yes?
Professor Margot Light, International Relations Department and Global Governance. This President Medvedev's proposal for a pan-European security organization, it's been battered backwards and forwards and discussed at various levels. I wondered whether you see any progress having been made and whether you think that there will ever be any kind of outcome to that.
Well, I certainly see progress being made. One sign of such progress is the invitation from our NATO colleagues to convene a NATO-Russia summit. Another sign of progress is the renewed interest in OSCE, including in the comprehensive approach to security, which is underlying the OSCE activities. And the principle of comprehensive security has been all but forgotten before the Medvedev's initiative was introduced. The initiative is very straightforward and very simple. And when people say that we don't understand what you mean, don't believe them. Everyone understands fully, because it's the simplest way of suggesting a foreign policy idea. Some 10 years ago, at the end of the 1990s, and in the beginning of last decade, in the context of OSCE, in the context of creation of the NATO-Russia Council, the presidents, the prime ministers, the leaders of all our countries endorsed the principle of indivisibility of security, and they even developed it in some more words, saying that no country should increase its security at the expense of security of others. We solemnly pledge. Those political declarations, unfortunately, did not work, because the indivisibility of security did not happen in quite a number of situations, including the war against former Yugoslavia, one of the OSCE member states. The indivisibility of security did not manifest itself and was not taken into account when NATO was expanded, in spite of the fact that there was no Warsaw Treaty left, no Soviet Union left. So NATO was expanded on inertia, trying to mark the space vacated by the former Soviet Union, so to say. We believed it was not really helpful, especially since, among other things, it created a crisis in the arms control in Europe. The CFE Treaty, Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty, after it was adapted, was ratified in the adapted version by Russia and Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, I think. But the NATO members decided not to. And in the process, we have been sticking to the limits agreed on the basis of the existence of two opposing groups in Europe. But one of those groups disappeared. Many of its members became the members of the North Atlantic Alliance. But the limits of the conventional arms allowed for them have been accumulated by NATO, and this balance was huge, and it still remains huge. So this type of examples, and I can go on with others, just made us convinced that the principle of indivisibility of security, that no one should expand his security at the expense of the security of others, does not work as a political declaration. So we suggested a very simple thing, to sign a treaty, making this principle legally binding, and developing some instruments to make sure that whenever some participant of the treaty feels insecure, that this participant can ask for a conference to convene and to listen to the concerns. The idea is to invite to such a treaty not only all countries in the Euro-Atlantic region, of course all European countries, US, Canada, but also the organizations which are active in this area in the security field. NATO, EU, Commonwealth of Independent States, Organization of Collective Security Treaty, OSCE, maybe even Council of Europe, because some of the aspects of security of hard security relate to the humanitarian issues because they might create humanitarian difficulties. And that's the offer which is on the table. When we started discussions in OSCE, NATO-Russia Council, in our dealings with EU, we have been told that it's not necessary because allegedly it provides, our initiative assumes the need to create some new organization, which is wrong. We don't want to create anything from the point of view of a new organization. We don't want to eliminate any of the organizations which I mentioned, including NATO. We are realistic. What we want is to see whether everyone was sincere when, during late 1990s, the presidents and the prime ministers were solemnly signing these political declarations, committing themselves politically, but not legally, to the principle of indivisibility of security. But you know what we heard privately from, but there is no secret, I believe all those who follow the situation know that this is the case. When we have been asking our NATO partners, some of them at least, what was the problem in our approach, they eventually said bluntly, it was decided in NATO that legal guarantees of security can only be given to NATO members, which is last century, which is Cold War logic, and it's very unfortunate. But we don't lose patience. We continue to promote this dialogue, this discussion. Many of our counterparts do not feel comfortable, and they, I think, started thinking about it. At least the principle of indivisibility of security has been confirmed in the declaration adopted in Lisbon during NATO-Russia summit last November, but again, as a political commitment, not as a legally binding principles. So there is an obvious contradiction in approaches, lack of consistency, and we will continue.
This gentleman here.
Thank you very much. Alexander Doom, I'm a PhD student in international relations. I just wondered if you could say a few words about how the Russian leadership perceives the People's Republic of China, which is growing at its borders rather steadily, and whether or not you would say that there's been a shift of foreign and economic policy momentum towards East Asia in Russia. Thank you.
Well, not only Russian leadership, but the entire Russian people perceive the People's Republic of China as a great neighbor. We have one of the longest land border. We have developed relations of strategic partnership and cooperation. We have very close ties in economic trade area, in area of energy, of course, including hydrocarbons, but also including more and more nuclear energy. We develop cooperative relations between the civil societies. Cultural events take place in both countries regularly. People-to-people exchanges. And we, of course, are very close partners with China in several formats like Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, which used to be BRIC, but with the accession of South Africa next month, it will be abbreviated BRICS. That's what happens. I mean, we are very close neighbors, and of course, counter-terrorism and counter-drug trafficking operations in the context of our bilateral relations, but also in the context of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is a very important component of our relationship. Of course, we are members of the UN Security Council. We are permanent members with China in the UN Security Council, which also creates another very important format for close cooperation in international and regional matters. As for the East Asia, Russia is looking forward to deepening our cooperation. We have long established relations with ASEAN. We are one of the ASEAN dialogue partners, and in that capacity we meet regularly with ASEAN at the Russia-ASEAN ministerial meetings and Russia-ASEAN summits. The last one was last fall. Last summit was held last fall in Hanoi. And we also participate in the ASEAN Regional Forum, which includes all ASEAN dialogue partners, including the United States, the European Union, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, India, others. By the way, in that format, for the first time, there was a meeting of ministers of defense of ASEAN and its dialogue partners held last year, which is a new development. We welcome it very much. We also, of course, APEC is not entirely limited to East Asia, but it's an important structure in the region. And last year we joined ASEM, Asia-Europe Dialogue. And last year, again, together with the United States, we have been accepted as full participants of East Asian summits. The formats in the East Asian region are quite numerous. Many of them overlap by way of membership and by way of their agendas. And I think that eventually the streamlining of these formats would take place, but it must come naturally. Russia is certainly interested in promoting deep cooperative relations with East Asian countries. Quite a number of them are also a source for our modernization programs. They also are interested in investing and doing business with the Eastern Siberian and Far Eastern parts of Russia. Bilaterally, we have developed many projects with China, Japan, I mentioned it, answering the previous question, Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. So this is a part of Asia and Pacific, one of the most dynamically developing regions of the world, and we want to be part of this integration developments. Plus, another element of our interest is security in the region. There is no single security structure like OSCE, for example, in Euro-Atlantic, but there are several dialogue formats to which I referred. Plus, there are several military alliances, US, Japan, US, Korea, US, Australia. Every now and then there are ideas that, they might get together into one bloc, not just bilateral alliances. It would be a pity if we start creating dividing lines and again introducing different levels of security guarantees. Some countries would be protected by legally binding commitments, others just by political statements and declarations. So I think in the context of East Asian summits, which we will formally join this year, our president would participate together with President Obama. As I said, US and the Russian Federation have been admitted. Given the participants list in East Asian Summit, and that's ASEAN plus China, India, Korea, Japan, Australia, and now Russia and the United States, basically you have all major players in the region and some informal, to begin with, discussion on how you ensure security in the region, I think would be very much appropriate. By the way, together with China, during President Medvedev's visit to Beijing last September, we moved forward an initiative to start discussing the security matters in the Asian Pacific region and East Asian region, to begin the discussion by reiteration of the very common principles of international law, like equal, indivisible security, like resolution of all disputes by peaceful means, non-use of force, and so on. So that's what I can say here about this region.
The lady in the background.
Angela Pataraev, Abkhaz State University. Sergey Viktorovich, a particular question. You have mentioned the Russian aspirations for the visa process. So in this case, my question is, will the present difficulties for Abkhaz citizens holding Russian passports be eliminated in the case of major ease of the whole visa process between Russia and Britain?
Before I answer, may I ask you, are you here on a Russian passport?
Yes.
So there is no problem for you, right?
No, I didn't say it's a problem. I said the major difficulties because I have been refused a visa first time, and
yeah, I know, and I didn't want to make a bad joke. It's a problem. It's a problem which, of course, is rooted in the overall situation in the Southern Caucasus, the situation which resulted from what happened in August 2008. We could not remain idle when our peacekeepers have been attacked by heavy weaponry and artillery and combat aircraft. We could not remain idle when civilians in South Ossetia have been attacked brutally with tanks and hand grenades thrown into cellars where women and children and elderly were hiding. And we did what we did. We had no geopolitical agenda. We just reacted to the loss of Russian life and the loss of other civilian lives. And we acted from the desire to not just to save civilians, but to save the South Ossetian and Abkhazian nations. I say also Abkhazian because during those events, the documents were found in the Kadori Valley of Abkhazia, clearly showing that Abkhazia was next. So we did what we did, and we recognized the independence of those two countries, newly liberated countries, I would say, because we had no other choice to save the existence of those nations themselves. Yeah, I understand that the European countries they have a different view. I understand that they have a different view, but I don't understand why. Because when you talk to them, not publicly, basically everyone accepts what happened. Especially since the Tagliavini report was out. The report was commissioned by the European Union, and the report contains an objective picture. The main conclusion of the report that Saakashvili started this war, in spite of the public call a few hours before that, that he wants a peaceful resolution and he would not order the use of force. So he lied. He lied not for the first time. He continues lying, and people listen to him and call upon us, to withdraw from Georgia, to de-recognize South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And that's where I am really startled, because even if they understand the hypocrisy of President Saakashvili, but still want to support him, this is political choice. But when they tell these things to us, knowing full well that we're not going to change our mind, this was the decision of the president, the toughest decision he took in this position, and to tell us, well, this is a temporary situation, you must leave. Apart from politicized approach, this is an absolutely unrealistic approach. And politicians who say this, they just, well, I don't believe that they that they believe in what they're saying, but they're absolutely non-pragmatic, non-realistic, apart from being politically immoral. I can discuss Abkhazia and South Ossetia for a long time, and we understand the EU, the EU position evolving into, well, closer to reality, and the policy which says, I don't remember how it was dubbed in English, involvement without recognition, I believe. And this policy is a step towards establishing contacts with the new reality. And this is a welcome sign. We certainly believe that the holders of the Russian passport deserve to be treated equally, be it Slav Russians, be it Abkhaz Russians, be it Georgian Russians, and that would be our position. I believe that people like you should not suffer from what Mr. Saakashvili did when he ordered the killing of the people whom he said he considered as his citizens.
This gentleman
Thank you very much.
My name's Martin Carlson. I'm a student at the International Relations Department. The last decade saw quite a hostile view from Russia about the human security dimension of the OSCE. For example, in your article in the Financial Times, you criticized the overemphasis on human security in the OSCE. I would like you to comment on how that has developed now and how you see the human security regime in Europe developing further in the future.
Well, I never was hostile to the human security dimension of OSCE. What we were saying, and I alluded to this when I was answering the question on the European Security Initiative by President Medvedev, what I was saying that the three pillars of OSCE, the hard security, economic security, and human security, have been endorsed by consensus when OSCE was created. First as the Conference on Security and Cooperation, then as organization. But before President Medvedev moved his proposal forward about the need to address military and political security issues in much more binding way, before that moment, there was hardly any mention of comprehensive security approach in OSCE. Even now, in spite of the fact that in the last 2 years the discussions have been held quite intensely on the need to reestablish the balance between the three baskets, as it were, about 80% of OSCE programs and resources are spent on the human security. And in those, most of this money and efforts is being applied, as they say, to the east of Vienna, though the humanitarian problems exist to the west of Vienna as well, especially if you take the issue of minorities. We have been promoting the need for OSCE to be more involved in the minorities problems. Some years ago, I think 3 years ago, when there was an outbreak of violence in France, when 2 young Arab boys were burned in the electricity booth, and when the violence started, there was a Council of Europe meeting, not OSCE, but a Council of Europe meeting where we suggested to discuss not France, not the French problems, but the issue of minorities in Europe, and not necessarily about Russian-speaking minorities in the Baltic states, but just the minority phenomenon in Europe, including its religious aspect. Now I think I can say that the French president called the Russian president and personally asked not to introduce this generic item into the agenda of the Council of Europe. This is just one example how our partners in OSCE and the Council of Europe, those are the same countries, from EU, are not comfortable to discuss the problems in humanitarian area which they face. And whenever you raise this in the OSCE or Council of Europe format, they say, look, we have the European Union and we will handle our problems ourselves. In OSCE, we will discuss you, Ukrainians, Belarusians, what have you. And this is wrong. This is not the right approach. So what I have been saying, what we have been saying, that OSCE must reestablish the balance, not by reducing its involvement in humanitarian matters, but rather by increasing its profile in political and military security and in the economic security areas. And as for the humanitarian agenda, we also want this agenda to be consistent with the mandates which OSCE has. One of those mandates, adopted during the last days of the Soviet Union, one of these mandates is to work towards freedom of movement, including visa facilitation. And that was written as a goal for OSCE members upon the insistence of the Western countries. And the Soviet Union, for obvious reasons, was not very eager, to accept this commitment, but eventually it was accepted. Now, when we remind our Western friends about their own initiative of 20 years ago and ask them what about freedom of movement, they are shying away from the discussion. So it's not that we don't want to discuss humanitarian things and human rights things in OSCE, it's that we want this discussion to be honest and fair.